lesson 1. So we were discussing the transport buttons, and they're up here: play, stop, forward, rewind, record, cycle. Cycle's key command C. Now, your book tells you to go ahead and in the loop browser search for break, bumps, beat. So I'm going to do that. If I could spell, it'd be fine. Break, bump, beat, 01. There you go. Your book also talks about, I'm going to make this bigger so you can see it. And I'm going to zoom in. And I'm just doing command right arrow to zoom in, left arrow to zoom out, command up arrow to expand or shrink, down arrow to expand. Here we go. So if I want to select this, you can see that it has this light bounding box. So that's selected. If I click away, that's deselected. So that means clicking anywhere over here. If I also want to update the cycle area, that's key command U. So there's, got to select it and do key command U, and that's how that works. Okay, C turns it on and off. If I were to loop it, and it's selected, I do U, there you go. C turns it on and off. Okay, so I'm going to undo my loop. Yes, the pointer or selector tool becomes the loop tool, region resize tool, or trim tool. The tempo is set for 135, and you can see that the tempo here is set for 135 over in the loops area. Remember, that's key command O to open up the loops area. If you can't remember that, it's your button masher. Just click right here. So it's automatically set to 135. I'm probably going to look at custom, and in custom, which is right click or control click right below this little X, I'm going to customize the control bar and display, and I'll probably turn on key signature and sample rate just for my own brain. Play, stop, rewind, fast forward is gone, mainly because I have expanded this whole top control bar area, but that's okay. That key command for forward is period. It goes one measure at a time, and rewind one measure at a time is comma. Okay. So the area right here where you see the 1, 2, 3, 4 is your ruler. And the ruler is tied to your time signature. Measures, keeping track of your measures. So the bar 1, beat 1, bar 1, beat 2. And you can see it says that the counter actually, the playhead position says 1, 2. So this is 1, 3, 1, 4, and 2. Starts over again. So you can see how those relate real quickly. You can stop and start your playhead by double clicking. Double click again, stops. Hit the space bar, plays, space bar stops. Go back to the beginning. On the number pad 0, if I hit space bar, stop. If you want to continuously repeat a section or cycle a section, that's C. But you see my cycle is going to be longer, so again I'm going to hit U. That basically sets what's called navigate. You set locators to selection and enable cycle. It's command U or U. Rounded would be if it's a little bit over 3, it chooses 3, or if it's a little bit under 3, it chooses 3. The command U is for an exact setting. If it's something not 100% on the beat, then that's how it'll make it work. And you can see that it cycles around and around and around and around and around. That's how you set the cycle area. It sets a left locator and right locator. And you can see up here in the way in which I customized my control bar and display that this 1 left locator and this is 3 the right locator. And you can see that this is my 3 right locator. It changes, and my left locator. All right, good. So you can see how those relate. And then this position is the playhead position. So I've got empty timecode at the top, and I've got the bar beat playhead position. And this is the playhead thumbnail. So to add another track, it's real simple. Since everything you're going to be building for these first projects is going to be using the loops, you're going to go over here to the instrument section. In fact, I'm going to click the orange X and reset it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for something called kick start. And I've got kickstart bass guitar, kickstart lead guitar, kickstart rhythm guitar. So I'm going to bring in the bass first. Okay, let's see how many measures that is. I'm going to zoom out. So our key command to zoom out was Command and the left arrow. So I have 8 measures. Please pay attention to the help tags when you drag stuff around. You can see that as I move it, it tells you that the length is still 8 measures, but its position is now starting at measure 2 or at measure 1. Make sure it goes right to measure 1. And now we're going to take a quick look at the region. Since these are all considered regions, they don't really call them clips in Logic. It's called a region. So you can have something called a region inspector. Sometimes it's not twirled open, so if yours isn't twirled open, click this little triangle or the twirly, and then this is the data for your region. And you can see that this region is set to follow tempo, and it has a little gain adjustment. There's other under more that we'll talk about a little bit later, but just so you know, that's there for every region. So if I select this region, you can see it has its own settings. The volume's actually brought down, but it's still set to follow tempo. So what we're going to do is show you a quick key command to make these Apple loops loop until the end. And so that would be key command L or clicking in the region selector box like so. So here's the key command L, just L. You don't have to press 0 to get back to the beginning. You can press return. So if I play, actually I'm going to turn the cycle area off. So that was Command C where I turned the cycle area off. I'm going to hit return. So return should work on your laptops, brings you back to the beginning. So now what I want to do is I want to save this project. Now I probably should have saved it at the beginning, but I'm just going to save this. I think your book has you save it as a specific name. As soon as I click save, it should ask me what you want it to be, and I'm going to say I want it to be, where I'm going to save this. I'm going to save it on my desktop. I'm just going to call it Break Bumps. You can call it whatever you want to. The book has a specific name that they want you to name it, Rock Beat or something like that, but it's all up to you since this is just you following my lead and, you know, playing with Logic. So now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of build the song up a little bit, and we're going to change how things work. So I'm going to start the bass on measure 5. Whoops, see they're all selected. We don't want that to happen. So you can see that's selected, that's selected. They're both selected. If I move one, they both move. Aha. I just want one to move, so I'm going to take and move the bass to measure 5. And I'm going to turn the looping off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the other 2 parts that were under the kickstart, And to show you what happens when you bring in two pieces of media at the same time that are audio, it's going to ask you a little quick question, and that question is, dude, what do you want to do with this? And I want to place the files on one track? I don't think so. I want to create new tracks because the tracks don't exist, and then click OK, and then I have two new tracks, and you see it automatically names everything, so that saves you some time right there. Let's hear what those sound like. Okay, so now let's zoom out a little bit to see the whole arrangement. Let me shrink this way. Of course, I could use the command and arrow, but it's going to adjust all of them. I should just adjust the solicit, adjust all of them. So I just want to adjust this one so they're all roughly the same height. Good. And then zoom out so we can see the project a little bit better. And that again was command and the left arrow key. All right, so we're moving right along. And in the loop browser, I'm going to hunt for another piece of audio. And it should be the pitch bender electric number 4. So I'm going to just search for it. So it's pitch, P-I-T-C-H. I like it. It's going here. Measure 5. And you make sure you look at the position indicator. Oops, see, I missed by that much. I can still drag it there. Good. Use the loop tool. Loop it all the way through. Okay, so now that I've made some changes, I'm going to save, Command S. So you'll notice that my key is set for C major right now, and that's up here. And if I click on the key signature, you can see it's set for C major. And if I play it, it's probably C major. Okay, now if I want this to be a different key, all I have to do, since these are Apple loops, is literally just say, hey, let's change this to E minor. C major, E minor, so that's going to be up A minor third. Let's go to E minor. And if I were to go back and look at these guitar parts, you can see that these were all in the key of E. So it's going to be better for them, since they were originally played in the key of E, to work in a key of E, even though it's E minor. So copying regions X around is pretty straightforward. So I can take this and I can drag it here, and you can see that it will get that it will cut off the old region. If I hold Option, you see this little plus key comes up, and you'll notice that the dialog, instead of saying Move Region, shifts to Copy Region. And then I release the mouse, and you can see it cuts it. In the book, and I'm not sure why it does this, but in the book there's an error, and it actually looks like this was cut. So if I were to do Command T and cut this, and I Option drag this, it'll look more like what the book looks like as it moves forward. And in the book they have you trim this to create a break. And really all you're doing is you're stopping the loop, so you have this one measure thing going on. If I move the playhead, turn that off, you can see that there's an edit right here, and that looks kind of more like the book. But if I were just to do it myself, and if you were to do it, you might find that, hey, you know, I'm going to take this pitch bender 4 and I'm going to Option drag, and if I drop it like so, then what happens is I have this long file, and it doesn't quite look like the book now, does it? But he has this cut right here, and you can do the same thing. You could cut it, you could edit by using Command T, or you could just do this and loop it. and make another copy here by option dragging any which way you want to do it to make sure that it looks like the book so that you can trim up this one loop to create a bar break for the bender. So in creating an intro, you're kind of doing this electric guitar pitch bender and drums. So go back and hit return. And then what I'm going to do also is add a little bit of a break. So I'm going to go search inside the loop browser for something called hip hop. One word doesn't work. How about two words? Should be hip hop breakaway. So let's try hip hop breakaway beat. Now it's only supposed to be for one measure, and you'll notice that when I drop it in, what it does is it completely wipes out the other loop from break bump speed. So I'll undo that so you can see it again. So kind of remember that as you're copying and pasting and dragging and dropping and trimming stuff, that things like this will happen because what you're doing is you're truncating or cutting off, stopping the loop. And really you only want one measure, so you could do this. Let's see what that sounds like. And you want to have break bumps beat start up again at 5. So you just option drag. So you can option, click, see the plus sign, copy region, drag, drop it, measure 5. Make sure you're looking at its position, and it will continue the loop like so. Here's what it sounds like. Okay, so far when I've taught you about how to zoom, I'm telling you to use the modifier key command and then, use the arrow keys left, right, up, and down. When you start zooming using the command key and the left and right arrow keys, essentially what you're doing is you're moving these little icons up here at the top right below no in and no out. So you have the track height and you have zooming in and zooming out. Now zooming in and zooming out can be a little confusing because technically if nothing is selected, so if I click over in this area and I zoom in, you can see it goes right to the playhead. Now if I select a loop and I zoom in, it goes to the incoming edge of the loop and bypasses the playhead. If I select a clip, because a clip's typically going to be edited, but even though this is a loop, it's not an actual looping file. So that's the thing you need to understand, is that if I select a file that is a loop, that is set to loop, so that's Command L, or you drag the loop out, you'll see that if I zoom in, it zooms to the edge and bypasses the playhead. Now if I just select a region, even though it might be a file that can be looped, that's what the little loop-de-loop is, and I zoom in, what happens? It zooms into wherever the playhead is, as if nothing was selected. So here I'll select the pitch bender electric, and it is a loopable file that has been looped, and so now when I zoom in, where does it go? Zooms into that left edge that's selected. So kind of be aware that zooming in using those tools, or even left and right, command left and right arrow keys, just key focus. If I select it, so you can see selected acts differently from unselected because it's a loop. And if I select, it's a file that has been looped because the left edge is more important. And here if I select a file that, even though it's a file that can be looped, it has not been looped, it zooms into wherever the playhead is pointing at in the measure. You can also zoom with a magnifying glass tool, and there's a couple of ways to do that. So if I hold option, you'll see the magnifying glass tool comes up. But if I hold option and I'm over a clip, nothing happens. It's from outside, and it's called rubber band selecting or slide selecting or selecting, and you can see that I create this bounding box, and when I release the mouse it zooms in, and if I go over to the edge holding option, it zooms out. Now if I use Control and Option, you'll see the magnifying glass come up, and I can zoom into a specific area and make a really big zoom. And then if I just hold the same Control and Option and I click, it zooms back out again. So you do have Control Option and Option, but Control Option is for working right on top of the clip for zooming into two clips. Want to zoom out, hold down Control Option, click on either one of the clips, away you go. Always release the key command when you're zooming like that first. Unlike Option, right? So if I'm going to copy something, I would click on it, Option, drag, release the mouse, then release Option. Logic has a pointer tool that we've been using so far, and see the pointer is sort of sitting here as a pointer. And as I move over to the edge of a clip, you can see that it trims it. Or if it's a file that can be looped, it loops it. So what they've done is they've added modifier keys to give you more tools. And so if you click, you can see I can change this to a different type of tool. So the pointer tool would be easily changed to a pencil tool, eraser tool, text tool, scissor tool, on and on and on. I can also learn the key command to do that, and that would be T, and it opens up. I can select a previous tool or any tool that I want to work with. But rather than always hitting T and making changes to a single tool, they have a command click tool. So with a command click tool, I can hold command and you can see it changes and it becomes the marquee tool. Now the marquee tool is designed to cut things away or select within a region and modify what's going on in that region. So here's an example. If I use the marquee tool and I select this area right here, it's one measure, I can delete that pretty easily just by hitting the delete key and make an edit. The other thing that you can do if you really needed to with the marquee tool is just make what's called a one sort of pixel selection, like so at 11, and click on it and just click on that little line and it edits it and makes a cut. So that's another way you can use the marquee tool quickly to make a cut, rather than if you're in a hurry and you're just sort of dragging and moving things around. You could learn Command T, which is essentially the same thing, but you see Command T cuts wherever the playhead's at. The marquee tool, you're selecting a thing and cutting that right there where you've selected it. Okay, so I'm going to undo that and go back, click away into any area outside the clip, and it doesn't select it or cut it on accident. So let's see, continuing on. If we wanted to keep building our project, you'll notice that I've got a hip hop break here. Everything comes in, and I've got another break at measure 12. So I'm going to start adding a few more things to make this a little more interesting. I'm going to add shimmering melody. So let's do a search for shimmering melody. And I've got 3 here, so I guess the question is, do I want rhythm guitar? Yeah, I think I'm going to go with that. And I'm going to drop this in right below right after the stop at measure 13. And then I'm probably going to add the lead guitar after that. And then I'm going to skip a couple of measures and I'm going to add something called Vendetta High Strings. I don't know, it sounds kind of weird to me, but I'll put it in anyway. I'll just put this in at 21. So I have a whole new section that's going to build up, and this is what I'm going to do is I'm going to rubber band select or slide select everything. So I just click with the regular pointer tool, click and hold, and you can see it creates this nice selection, and then L to loop everybody until the end. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So now we need to try and figure out an end to our song. So we have these two sections. I've got an intro, got an A section, I've got a break that leads into a B section. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is probably start changing a few of these items. So the shimmering rhythm guitar that I have here, and then I'm going to start trimming up and ending the song in a particular spot. So let's see. End at 29 a couple of ways. I can just go and click here with the loop tool on each of the spots. If they're all selected, I can try this. I can try doing a slide selection across all of them and see if I can cut them all. Now, see if they will all react differently. So we won't do that. So 29's fine. Let's just click them one at a time and end them. That works. And so I've got an end. So now what I'm going to do is try to give these a little bit more color and texture. So if I select shimmering melody and I go over to the transpose, I can go over here and click up an octave. I hear how that sounds. So here's before. Kind of dark and heavy. All I have to do is transpose up an octave, so that's 12. Okay, I can live with that. So now what I want to do is kind of move the bass over and maybe change up how the bass plays, and then possibly do a little bit of some changing of the chords as we go through different sections. So we're already done the E minor. Now we'll talk about how would I change the chords of songs to make a difference, because we've got this. Right. That's the bass part. So I'm going to option drag. I'm going to option, click, option, drag to 21. And it comes in at 21. Let's see if it sounds right. Doesn't really change chords properly. So we'll have to fix that real quick by doing an edit. And I'm going to zoom into that by using our little control and option key commands to modify our keys, and then drag into it so I can see it. And now what I'm going to do is create a new baseline by editing. So here's where I can, at roughly 23, I can take the marquee tool, which is command click, and I can kind of guess right here this is 23. And if I'm not sure, I could always move the playhead right to 23 to see it. Okay, so right at 23. So I'm going to click right there at 23. If I click and hold, it'll tell me it's at 23, and then I click again and it cuts it. So that's using the marquee tool to cut it. And then let's see what I'm going to do. I'm going to make another cut at 25. Do the same thing. I can do the same type of selection and cut. And then I'm probably not going to use this last piece. So I'll just delete, I'll select it and delete it. You can see I can just sort of slide select or rubber band select over here and delete it. And then I want these two to shift. I want this half to play first. So I'm going to change my edit mode. Now for those people that are really used to Pro Tools, you have edit modes. And so we do have edit modes in Logic as well. And so I'm going to close a loop browser. I'm going to close a loop browser so we can see this extended top bar. And you'll see it says no overlap. And so no overlap means that if I drag something like so, you can see it truncates it. That's no overlap. So we have these other modes. So if I click over here, you can see I have X fade, shuffle left, shuffle right. So if I'm going to shuffle left, what do you think will happen if I drag it and move it? Shuffles it left. So you have the same type of edit modes, shuffle, when you're dragging clips around. You can have no overlap or crossfade or shuffle right. Okay, here we go. So now what does that sound like? What I want to do is I want to change its pitch so that it fits a little bit better with everything. Well, all I have to do is to go over again to transpose, and rather than choose an actual value that's an octave or 2 octaves above or below, I can go over to transpose and I can drag it down. I'm just going to do -7. What does that sound like? It becomes tough to hear what's actually happening. So I guess the question would be, would it sound better if I go up? So what would that be? Would that be up 5? Down 7, up 5? I hear that better, right? So you're dragging, semitones. So if I'm going down 7 half steps, that would be a 5th. So I'd be going up a 4th, right? And that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's enough math for today. Anyway, so and when you listen to the section, it's got a little bit better sound to it. And the great thing is I can actually take these 2 sections and repeat them. So what I want to do is I want to duplicate this or repeat this. So the easiest thing to do is to do Command R, and it repeats it. So now I have the same thing twice. And that comes from the pull-down menu, Edit. You'll see Repeat once. Now I've set this multiple up for using all the modifier keys, but typically this is not set up by default, and you have to set this up yourself. So don't expect it to be all the modifier keys and then R to do multiple. What I want you to do once you've got it set in and duplicated and ready to go, you want to zoom out, so you would hold Control and Option, click in the background, and now you can zoom out to see the whole song. You have one little thing that you've got to add, or maybe 2 little things that you want to add, and it's a little tag at the end. So we're going to open up the loop browser. That's key commando. And I'm going to look for something called circuit breaker. C-I-R-C-U. And I've got I'm going to drag circuit breaker here. So let's see what we got. Okay, and I'm going to loop that 1 time. And then I'm going to take my shimmering rhythm guitar and bring that out to the end. So I create this little tag at the end, so it's like an outro. And at the end of the circuit breaker, I'm going to put a little tag thing called Angelic Crash. Angelic Crash FX, there it is. So that's how my piece will end. So here is your whole song that you've created. Starting from the beginning, added a little beat break. B section, bass. Bass kicks in. Bass kicks in with pitch change. You can see in the region selector, up a fourth or down a fifth, does that twice. And then we have a little outro. Intro, A, B, outro. See, pretty quick and easy to throw together something, even though this is sort of a fast mashup. It's not the worst and it's not the best. Okay, so let's start working on a quick mix for this. So if you hit X, you open up the mixer. That's also this mash button up here. Okay, that's your turn on the mixer button. And the mixer is basically just a list with faders of the tracks that are out in the workspace. So I'm going to close the loop browser. That's O. One of the things that you do when you get ready to mix is you make sure everything is labeled properly. Let me make these bigger so you can see them. You can notice that I have a little filter. This whole thing at the top of the mixer is basically a filter area here, so I can see a single track and see the pathways that it's connected to. I can see the tracks and see how they're connected to the stereo out in the master. And I can filter, like if I don't want to see the audio, which would make no sense since I'm only working with audio, but I could filter out the audio. So if I had other types of tracks, I can filter it. I can also change the track width, and so I'm going to do the widest track width so that you can see this and I can see this. Okay, so one of the things that you may want to do is label stuff a little bit better. You can change the name here, double click, you call it drums, and you can see that it also updated up here in the workspace area on the track list. But I can do the same thing on the track list. So if I close this, I can go over here to this Kickstart bass guitar and double click it and just call it bass. Hit enter, hit X, you'll see that it was updated and changed the name to bass. So it's pretty straightforward. You want to change the names. You can change the names in the track header, or you can change the name in the mixer. So the book has you change everything to got lead guitar, bass guitar. Really, this is pretty easy to do. You don't even have to retype. You can just do this and select everything out. Got rhythm guitar. Select delete. High guitar. I don't know. That's what he's calling it. So you've named everything. You kind of know what everything is and what the sound is rather than trying to rely on, gee, I wonder what that loop's actually playing. You've named it in such a way that you can identify it real quickly so that when you hit X and you hit the mixer, you can go, oh yeah. And when you listen to it, you can say, oh, there's too much drums and I need to adjust the sound. So the only thing that's a little bit odd is you'll notice that the bass, the lead guitar, the rhythm guitar, high guitar, funky melody, they actually have these little icons, and the strings have these icons. So if I hit X, you'll see the drums do not. Well, if you control click or right click, you can open up this icon library and you'll see drums, and you can just choose a drum set to your liking, and so now you've got drums. I'm not sure if they have other basses, but if I control click, they've got 1, 2, 3. I'm going to use a Hofner. There we go. Save your work, Command S, and let's do some little bit of mixing and adjusting of volume. So X to open the mixer up, or you can press, like I said before, this button up here. So now when you're looking at the mixer, you can kind of see these icons that help you see visually what things are, and a name that sort of represents things. So one of the things that you can do, if everything is too loud, which it may not be, you can slide select everything and drag the volume down and drag everybody. I'm not going to adjust my master because it'll overload the software that's recording this, but you could adjust the master. You could also adjust the stereo output and slide select all of them like so, and you'll see they'll all adjust. But right now, I just want to talk about doing a quick overall mix and a pan real quick. If yours opens and you don't see the top of the tracks, Just click right there and drag it up. So we're going to adjust the volume in the stereo position. So how this works is you have a fader. This is your volume fader. More drums, less bass, lead guitar, rhythm guitar. You have a panner. But here is the buyer beware on this. If you have a stereo sound, this is a balance knob. It's only a pan knob if it's a mono sound. And so when you look at your book and they say it's a pan knob, it's actually a typo and it's a bad thing. If you really want to pan a stereo image, you have to right click or control click and you'll see it says stereo pan. And now you take your stereo instrument and you do this. So if you were to take the funky guitar and pan it in a particular direction, you would do that. Because otherwise, as a balance knob, if it's a stereo image, you'll lose color. See how that's dark? That's a little bit brighter. That's kind of the idea of what a balance knob does. And so by default, this is a balance knob. So be aware that if you really want to pan stuff, you have to right click or control click and change it to a stereo pan and then adjust that. And then you can also make something more mono. Grab this little center part. It'll let me do it. Doesn't always let me do it. There we go. And then you can do this and drag the center part around for whatever your narrowing of the pan is, so you can place this in a mix better. And this just takes some practice, so don't worry if you can't get this working exactly the way I have this working right now. You're going to set level, you're going to set a pan to something that you think the book has you do, something like this. You know, adjust the level a little bit. Let's listen to what these sound like. And right here, kind of a similar idea. I kind of feel like this stereo image is a little weird, so let's do it again. Okay. So that's my mix, if I listen to the whole song. To share this wonderful, amazing thing that you've just created and wanted to mix, you have to render this out. You have to bounce this out. Now you'll notice that you have right here on your inspector, so if it's open, I for the inspector, you can click this button and it opens up a dialog to bounce out the mix. You have that same button over here under stereo out, and you click on it and it's bounce and it opens up that dialog. All that button is doing is it's literally going down and saying file, bounce. And you're going to do project or selection. Let me tell you some quick things about project or selection. If I choose project or selection, you'll notice that you have some choices. PCM, pulse code modulation. From your recording 1 class, you should remember what this is. PCM is just the ones and zeros that is considered full resolution. MP3 is a compressed file. M4A or AAC is a compressed file, and you can also burn to CD or DVD if you have a device attached. Now, you can do all of them at once. I have a device attached. It would probably ask me for a CD if I burnt to CD. Let's just do 3. Just for the sake of it, and you can see that if I click on each one PCM, I can change the format. Okay, if I decide I want to go to 44.1, dither, if I change the bit depth to 16, here we go. I got UV22, so I can do the sample rate and I can do bit depth conversion. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay at 24-bit and 48K. I'm just showing you can do it. Add to music would go to your iTunes library. Add to project would go into your project audio bin. So you also have some choices here. So once we continue down after choosing the file types we're going to create and setting up each of the file types. So if I click on MP3, I can add some more information or change it to